officiality. I'm Troy Walker. I am the director of crop nutrients for MKC and Midwest Fertilizer. I appreciate all of you, both customers and employees that are on here today, to listen or at least slightly be entertained, perhaps. We have the honor and privilege of having Josh Linville from StoneX and Twitter fame with us today. So Josh and I are going to discuss fertilizer a little bit, hopefully give you some background and some information that you can, make some decisions or at least scribble around with your pencil on for the rest of the fall season here. So I don't know, Josh, like we were talking, there's a lot going on. I mean, there's nothing going on in fertilizer right now, but there's a lot going on all at the same time. So why don't you kick us off and give us how you see it, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think one of the most frustrating things with the fertilizer market right now, I mean, aside from the fact that prices are stupidly high, grain prices are stupidly low, and as it always tends to be, it's the farmer who's paying the price of this whole thing. So it's making for a really, really tough situation. I think the thing that as a market, as North American market, thing we're struggling with is that these are not events happening outside our window in our backyard. These are events that are happening halfway around the world that's causing the vast majority. Now, are there things that are going on that's affecting us here at home from our own doing? Yes, these tariff things have a little bit of a play to it. Some of our operating rates are not great. So I'm not sitting there saying we're just completely fine and it's all the rest of the world. There are some things here, but a lot of these events that are really the drivers in these markets, it's international. And the one thing, and I'm just going to bring this up right now before we really jump into the products, is that a lot of people keep saying, but look at 2008. But Josh, look at 2008. Look at what happened in 2008. That is a right approach. That is looking back to history and saying, okay, let's find something that was similar so that we can try and get ahead of it and look for patterns. That is a great approach to it. It's exactly what you ought to be doing.
Yeah.
I really caution everybody on that because 2008 was a wholly different marketplace. Now, I was in the marketplace back in 2008. I started in fertilizer in '02. If you remember 2007, our corn crop, typically speaking, was around 78 million acres a year, right? Give or take.
Yeah.
And what happened in 2008? Ethanol boomed. Section
Right.
ban. There's all this stuff. And what happened? We weren't 78 million bushels or acres anymore. We went to like 90 plus million.
Right. Right.
Think of all that damn fertilizer that all of a sudden appeared. And so I'm telling you, I was making sales by this point in the calendar. I was making sales for the coming fall, for the next spring. I was making sales. I remember there were some Southern Missouri guys that were making purchases for the next fall season because if you didn't get it now, it was going to be like $500 a ton higher.
They were just worried about being short.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Eventually, you run out of demand when you go like that. It drove prices insanely high. Nobody gave a crap because the corn price was so high, values we had never even dreamed about. It's like, I don't give a crap what the fertilizer price is. Pour it on. I'm going to produce every damn bushel I possibly can.
Right.
But all of a sudden, the music stopped. The demand stopped. Grain prices started to fall back. Everybody's like, I'm just going to chill out for a second. And everybody started looking around. It's like, how the hell do we still have product? How do we still have supply to sell? Oh, no. The fall sold out. We're already good. What do you mean we sold most of the spring? You mean there's nobody going to buy this crap until next fall? Oh, no. And all of a sudden, away she goes. And because there's no demand left, there's no floor there. That was a demand driven marketplace. It was demand driven bullish run. That does not mean it's wrong, but it means it was supported fully by demand. And when that demand falls away, so is the price. All of these issues we have today is supply driven. Those are different.
Yeah.
It's like going to Lowe's when lumber got tight and prices started to skyrocket. Boy, those prices went up really, really fast, didn't they? When you started to see hear the stories of lumber futures, things like that were falling, did that price of the 2x4 or the sheet of plywood at Lowe's go down in price very quickly?
Not very fast.
Quick to go up, slow to come down. And that's where we're at. This is a supply driven market. I'm not sitting here saying I guarantee you prices will not go down. I don't know. Frankly, if I did, I'm not sitting in Kansas City right now having this conversation, folks. I like the beach.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah.
But I'm here because I don't know. I'm just looking at this thing, trying to give you guys the information as we see it, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people are like, "Oh man, this thing, fertilizer is so hard." I'm like, it's really not all that hard, right? It's
Right.
it's like what you learned in Econ 101 in
Mhm.
whatever year you took that. Um, it's supply and demand,
Yeah.
and like you said, that's interesting that it was that different in '08 and it was demand driven. Whereas, I mean, I think what you're going to say now is it's supply driven. I mean,
Right.
if people look back, and we talked about this before, and I've put it out to our team internally, and hopefully they've shared it out to the countryside, UAN being the most recent one, right? If you looked at
Hmm.
what happened to UAN from last February, and it's not the first time, because I remember it happened, what was it, 2020 or 2021, that year we had that Arctic freeze. Remember that thing
Yep.
that snuck in there and screwed up all of the manufacturing through Texas and so forth? If you, I mean, so we see this, but UAN seems to be very prone to this, and I think it's because it's such
Mhm.
a domestic produced product, right?
Yeah.
Um, we had supply problems throughout the spring. We lost Weaver, Iowa. We lost Pryor for a little bit, and we lost what, Fort Dodge, was it? So
Dodge. Yep.
there's some anyway. Collectively, we lost 30 to 60 days of production right in the middle of when we needed it all.
Yep.
And that was, I mean, that's why we saw UAN not, it didn't ever come down through May. Matters of fact, I think it even went up in May, stayed up in June, and now we're finally starting to see it come back down, but not near the level that we would have expected. And that means, for our listeners here, we're likely to be going into this fall season, this upcoming season, short. Now, I get it, nobody needs UAN in October, but it means there's not a lot of incentive for these manufacturers to decrease the price and get it out their door.
Well, that's it. It all comes down to negotiation power, and that's the thing. For all the stuff that's out there, it really becomes a negotiation power between the buyer and seller. And guys, I'm not going to sit there and tell you that, oh, I can guarantee you we're going to get to next spring. It's going to be a repeat of this spring. You're not going to be able to find it. No, there's still things that need to happen. But I will tell you right now, we are starting this fertilizer year on the UAN side significantly closer to repeating that story than we ever have been before. And it's because you start going through all the points. Our exports were big last year. They could be bigger. Is that something we're doing? No, it's a European Russia situation in Trinidad. Our imports could be smaller. Is that something we're doing? Actually, yes. We're talking about tariffing Russia heavily. That'll stop half of our imports from coming. Crop is going to continue to be very heavy corn. 93 million is what we're using for next year. And yes, that will change, but still indicative of a lot of
Yeah,
nitrogen demand. Our starting inventories are near zero. It's the lowest we've ever seen because we had such a big spring run that lasted so freaking long. There's nothing left in the system.
yeah,
And a lot of these plants are going down. These nitrogen plants, you ever been to one? You don't get to step foot until you walk through a safety briefing. They talk about if there's a release and if there's a siren, then here's where you go. It's not a bunch of crap. Those plants are high pressure, high temperature. They're dangerous. They break, they wear down equipment, so they have to repair it, or the plant will break, and you're like, crap, we got to find the where that broke, and then figure out how to fix it. It's even worse.
yeah. They wear through a lot of parts of those plants for sure.
That was the biggest shock in the world when I went to go work for Coke for that time. How often we got emails that said, "Oh, part 103J is vibrating, and we got to shut it down and figure out what's going on." So it's all to sit there and say, listen, we look at these events, we say it can never happen again. It absolutely can.
Well, then, like we were alluding to earlier, we've got some of these other events that are, I mean, I would say they're not typical, but we've been now dealing with them for quite some time.
Mhm.
You know, it, if this Russia thing gets, I mean, that could get out of hand really quick, right?
Mhm.
If we go and you know, tariff Russia or duty Russia or whatever we want to call it, um, that's not insignificant. I think what a lot of people maybe don't realize, because we've been in this conflict with Russia for what, like 3 or 4 years now. I don't know that people realize how much fertilizer we are still getting from Russia.
They So to put it into context, Russia is our biggest supplier of urea. They are our biggest single supplier of UAN. Now we're not getting anhydrous from them, but that's because Russia can't export anhydrous because their export pipeline literally ran through Ukraine down to the Odessa region, which they've attacked over and over again,
Yeah.
and they just cannot export anymore. Which okay, they're not coming here directly, so it doesn't matter. Guys, Russia was the world's biggest anhydrous exporter at over 4 million a year. They are struggling to reach 1 million ton right now per year. So we lost their biggest one. You think that doesn't affect prices around the world? It absolutely does.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I've told people we've been telling this story for 2 or 3 years, but that's why I think even this deal with that they just did with the EU will be interesting to see more details and look into if that kind of commits the EU more to the U.S. supply chain, because that would be different. Because what we've been saying for a while is, look, if whenever the Ukrainian conflict gets sorted out and we get back to quote normalized trade, that should change things dramatically because instead of this very inefficient addition of cost of shipping UAN over here, and then we ship it, and then the US shipping UAN back to France, they'll just ship it back down their pipeline,
Right.
assuming that they rebuild the pipeline. But again, if so we got to see what happen, when that happens. And
Yep.
the way things currently are, we don't know if that's going to happen tomorrow, or if it'll be a year from now, or what. And that I think that's what's also making all of us in the fertilizer space. There's just a lot of uncertainty. And so we can identify, I think, with farmers who aren't wanting to buy and wanting to commit because we don't necessarily know what tomorrow's going to look like with some of these things. But
I had a conversation with a buddy of mine. This was a day or two ago. And we were talking about the markets, and he's like, "I am way too tired and way too busy for nothing going on in the marketplace." And I kind of said back to him, I was like, "You're absolutely right." I was like, "Normally, the fertilizer market, historically speaking, you would have periods of just absolute dead time. I can tell you, I used to work across the street at Traverse. That's where I started my career. And we had time. We had a little magnetic dartboard, and we would have days where we just start betting, throwing darts at the damn thing because it was so slow. I
yeah,
shit, I can only call guys like Troy so many times. So they're like, leave me the hell alone. There's nothing going on. I don't need anything. I don't need a truck or a car or a barge or a train or whatever. It
I,
was that slow, but we don't have that anymore. It's just so much going on globally. Now, and it's important to go through and kind of point to, well, what are all these things that are causing it, right? We don't really know why if we don't know what the root cause of the supply tightness is. So hitting on urea, it's multi-front. Unfortunately, it's not just one thing. A big chunk of it is still Europe. Like Troy said, when Russia and Europe started to kind of get into it right before they invade Ukraine, they shut down the Nord Stream pipeline. And so they came in behind and said, screw it, it's not enough to shut it down. We're going to blow the damn thing up. Well, European nitrogen manufacturers rely on natural gas for their input. That price skyrocketed because all of a sudden you got to start finding it from the rest of the world. And it's an unnatural, expensive move. So European production is at 75% right now. What does that mean on a global scale? That's about 3 to 3.5 million tons of urea every year that is not being produced. And not only is that removed from the supply side, do you think European farmers are just saying that, oh, shucks, I guess we just won't use it? No, now they're going to the world and saying, I don't give a crap who else is buying it from these places. I'm going to go compete. I'm getting my tons. So right at the top, we're talking 3.5 million tons of urea lost. Um, the Israel-Iran war, it only lasted 12 days, but Iran had to shut off their natural gas because they didn't know if Israel's going to attack the infrastructure or not.
yeah,
And you have to shut that stuff down as a safety precaution. They did. Egypt shut down too. And people are usually like, what the hell does Egypt have to do with it? Where do you think they get their natural gas from?
right,
Israel. And
yeah,
Israel shut down their gas fields, so they were offline.
yeah,
Fortunately, it only lasted 12 days. It wasn't a long time. Who cares, Josh? Not a whole lot of tons. Those are your third and fourth largest urea exporters in the world between Iran and Egypt. We lost 600,000 tons, just boom, 2 weeks, just gone.
yeah,
So you've got that going on. Russian exports have continued to flow. That was one of the big things we were worried back in 21, 22 was that prices will skyrocket, and they did skyrocket because we thought Russian exports were just going to cease to exist, and they were a major player. They didn't. Now they're not going to normal places all the time. They're going to different places, which is a little bit higher transportation costs. It's an inefficient trade flow. But fortunately, that one never played out. China. China is historically 10% of the global urea export market, 5 to 5.5 million tons. Last year, why were prices so high? 262,000 ton. What is that, 5% of normal? Now this year, we're getting a blessing. They're supposed to export 3 million ton. That's still 2 to 2.5 million tons shy, but the world still sees it like, man, it'd be great if we could hit 3 million after what they did last year. And then
And
you
it's
got
not
places,
that those tons are coming to us, right, Josh?
right, right, but it's lower global supplies, and to sit there and say, well, the world doesn't matter, that is sticking your head in the sand and refusing to look at the world as it is. We have to move up and down with the world. Let's say if we move to a premium versus the world, that is our way of saying we really need tons. We need to get stuff coming in. Please bring it, bring it, bring it.
Yeah.
When we move to a discount, we're putting up the red light and saying, stop. We don't need it. You can send it here, but you're not going to like the price. We get to be too much of a discount. We start to export.
Right.
And we don't have the supply for it. So, yes, we don't have to be an absolute lockstep dollar for dollar for dollar with the rest of the world. But we can't get out of step with the rest of the world, or else the market fundamentals are going to force us to happen. So, yeah, when the world S&D gets height, I don't care what our S&D looks like.
Yeah.
It still has an effect on our pricing. We are part of this world market, whether we like it or not.
So to kind of put a bow on urea, these guys thinking about fall urea, right? And we do have a lot of growers who do fall urea. We also have, in our territory, we have the wheat, the wheat run and the wheat growers that are here. They may be thinking about, do they want to fertilize it or not? But, now through December, what are the things they ought to be keeping an eye on or thinking about in order to make a decision on urea nitrogen?
One of the things I worry about is product being in place.
Yeah.
And there might be some people listening and say, okay, shut up, Josh. It's always in place. It's going to be in place. And I don't mean that to sit there and say, oh, it's going to be short. I don't look at what happened with UA in spring and say, oh, I think it's going to happen on every product, every season for the rest of the time. I am not saying that. And Troy isn't paying me, at least not yet. I don't know what you're going to pay me in order to make these statements. You want me to stay.
We'll negotiate that later.
But when you look at it from the retail perspective, they see all this global stuff going on, and they see the what and the why and the where and all this stuff, and they understand why the price is high. They don't like it. Every single retailer that we work with has sat there and said, I'd much rather the price be low. My farmers like me a lot more, and frankly, when you look at it from a percentage, I do better. My company does better when the prices are lower.
Yeah.
But the retailer is sitting there saying, I understand all the supply situation and why I need to have these tons in place. But on the same point, they appreciate what's going on at the farm level. They know you guys are bleeding. They know you are hemorrhaging cash. It's not just fertilizer, it's chemical, it's seed, it's equipment. Every single input wants the same size or bigger piece of a pie, and they don't even understand the pie has shrunk considerably.
Yeah.
And so they're looking and saying, I understand supply situation. I don't even know if my buyer is going to be there. And what my fear is that some retailers may sit there and scale back on their purchases and just say, listen, unless that farmer is taking stepping in to buy this stuff, I can't take all the risk. I can't take the price risk either. It'll ruin me if it goes the wrong way. And so it might be a little bit more of a conservative buying pattern as we move into these fall markets, especially if there's any sort of an iota of a chance that the fall application can wait until winter or spring.
Well, and yeah, I mean, and certainly I feel that. I mean, we really at MKC Midwest, we really, really try hard to have product in place all the time for growers, but it is difficult. I think it's maybe more difficult than it appears. Hopefully it's just like Disneyland, and we make it look magical.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not like Disneyland, more like Disney World, because that little castle at Disneyland, it's actually like really small. It's not.
Well, and you got to pass a lot of crackheads to get there.
Yeah, it's really that's true too. But we really try to get all this product in place, but particularly when the grower delays, when we delay, and then I mean I've seen it so many times the last few falls. Yeah, the river. I mean, I think probably most of our team people on the call and so forth understand where we get a lot of our product. A lot of our dry fertilizer comes out of the Tulsa market, so that means it's coming up the river. Any disruption to the river, whether that's high or low or a lock or a dam has an issue or is
Hmm.
replaced, or what was it? Something fell off of a bridge last year. I mean,
Hmm.
there's always something,
Yep.
and if that creates even a few day delay, and usually it's like a week to 10-day delay, um, then there's only so much buffer sitting down there at Tulsa, and so then it's a domino effect,
Hmm.
of what happens. My
Yep.
favorite one that I heard, that I remember was, this was about 2 years ago. We ran out of DAP. I don't know that we really actually ran out, but we were like waiting for DAP. Well, it was all because the ship was on the wrong side of the Panama Canal. Remember that? Remember
Yep.
when the Panama Canal didn't have enough water to get
Mhm.
ships to go through it? And
Yep.
so, hey, why can't you get DAP in Hutchinson, Kansas? Because there's not enough water in the Panama Canal. I think again, those are some other things like you and I talk about them all the time, and understand how all these global things impact this. But down at hey, I just want to go to Hutchison and get fertilizer, or
Yep.
I just, whatever. It's tricky there. So, um,
It's a butterfly flaps its wings in Africa type situation.
yeah,
And
yeah,
most of the time we have no idea. And that's a good thing. That's a great thing about the ag market. And this is across every product. I'm not talking just fertilizer. You think about it from a chemical, from a seed standpoint, the things that are done behind the scenes to make sure it all works.
yeah,
I'm not saying the farmers don't play their part. Of course they do. But there are so many moving parts and everybody busts their butt when it comes time to make it happen. And most of the time we get to the season and it's where it needs to be when it needs to be there.
yeah, yeah,
But it takes and this is what people get upset about. They're like, take again the UAN situation. Oh, you guys have cried wolf so many times. It never happened. It's just a sales technique. It's like, guys, I'm trying to tell you how close it's been. And sometimes it is literally a rain that comes across in a 12-hour span that is the difference between we're okay and we couldn't get you the product when you wanted it.
well, and the other thing I think, now they'll really think I'm on a sales pitch. Like, I, the thing is, like, if we're going to have product in place, it means one or both of a couple things happen, right? We took some risk to assume that we wanted to, make sure we had that product. So whether we bought it high and the market goes low, whatever, or we invested in space to be able to hold, and usually it takes both, to hold this product when maybe other people haven't. But so, again, if you want to make sure that you're going to have something, it doesn't come for free, right?
Mhm.
Um, there is a cost associated. All let me ask you more of a little bit of a more fertilizer wonky question. Um, I think people, and it's not too wonky, but people hear about urea, um, and like the cost, or I'm sorry, about India.
Mhm.
I think people who follow fertilizer even loosely probably hear India thrown around from time to time. Can you walk through at an elementary level, why do we always talk about India in the fertilizer market?
Yeah. India is the world's largest democracy from a population standpoint. And politicians in India are absolutely no different than politicians in every other democracy in the world. They are power hungry and they will cling to that power however humanly possible. Now, think about the Indian economy. 25% of every voting person in that country are attached to ag. So you're power hungry, you want to keep your position. 25% of your voters are attached to ag. If I can keep your fertilizer prices low and steady, regardless of what's going on in the world,
Yeah,
keep voting for me.
yeah,
And that's what they do. So the Indian farmer does not see this global volatility like everybody here on this call does.
no,
The price goes up, their price stays the same. Now the government has to create a subsidy payment
yeah,
so the importers can keep bringing product in to meet demand. The farmer never sees it. And India is a country that some may make a case that there is some odd ways of doing business and calls and stuff like that. We won't get into that on this call, but in order to make sure that there's not backroom deals done from the fertilizer standpoint, because the government plays such a large part in it, the government makes all these purchases public, and they do what's called a purchase tender. And they'll tap a company and say, like IPL, IPL, you are going to handle this purchase tender. You're going to go try and buy 2 million ton of urea. Go. And so IPL will announce it and all the details. And then the world market will gather up all their offers and they'll go and they'll submit it. To make sure that some people aren't getting preferential treatment, IPL will now open all the offers and they will list them out to the world and say, here's what everybody offered. Here's the tons. Here's the price. And again, to make sure it's not like, hey, I know that West Coast price was $20 lower than me, but buy mine. I'll give you $5 a ton that you buy from me kickback, just in your own personal account. To make sure that doesn't happen, the government requires that every offer that wants to participate has to match the lowest price offered on each coast. So if I offer 450 West Coast and Troy offers 480, they'll sit there and say, okay, Josh, you're locked in at 450. You have to sell for that price. Troy, if you want to participate, drop your price to 450. And so this method was superb decades ago when the world was well supplied. Unfortunately, that's a situation we've been talking about for years on our side, is that global production of nitrogen has not kept up with global demand. That difference has gotten smaller and smaller. So that worked well back then when there's excess product. And everybody's like, holy crap, they're buying 1 million ton. Oh my God, we got to sell this. Drop your price to whatever it takes to participate. We got to get a block of tons gone. Well, what happens when a market is very, very highly supplied and all of a sudden somebody pops up and says, oh, you know what? I need 2 million ton. You're going to pay a premium for it. And that's why every time we see these announcements, the price goes higher. So it is a great view of the spot market because it kind of shows everybody's cards are on the table. There's no hiding from it. And it also usually boosts the market price. And we move up and down with that market movement.
Yeah, it provides a lot of opportunity for suppliers to get rid of any extra link that they may have had or they may have. So it's yeah, and they've seemingly, and because I think the system hasn't worked quite as well as it used to, and they've done a lot of tenders this year, unsuccessful, right?
Yes.
So they want 2 million, they get 750,000, so they come back a week and a half later and ask for 2 million again. And they've just they've been in that cycle, it feels like, for a couple of years now, where they're not ahead,
Right.
and they're constantly taking up all of the excess supply in the global market, which keeps prices up because there's not extra. It's back to our original supply and demand. There's not extra length in there to dump anywhere that needs to be dumped.
Yeah.
Let's maybe quickly on anhydrous. I don't think we've talked about anhydrous, and then we'll move on to phosphates. What are your thoughts on anhydrous going into this fall?
Best way I can tell you is I had a conversation with my dad the last week or the week before. I think week before. Josh, I got my retail price. It wasn't pretty. I was like, yep, no, it wasn't. But go ahead and buy it. Are you sure? I was like, I said, you want to put it on the fall, right? He's like, yep, I don't want to wait till winter. I don't want to wait till spring. I want the soil. I don't want to have to worry about having to do that close to planting.
Yeah.
Like, then go ahead and do it. I said, unfortunately, again, let's look globally. Russian exports are not there. That's 3 to 4 million ton per year missing. European production is still 75% of normal. That hurts. Iran and Egyptian production has been on and off again. Part of it was due to the war. Part of it was the gas supplies in the wintertime. Part of it is Trinidad. Their production continues to be up and down because their gas fields are unable to keep up with the demand. And so their production has to kind of ebb and flow with how the supplies are coming. And I'm going to say this. Do not get mad at me. Let me finish the comment before you start yelling at me. Anhydrous is cheap. Anhydrous is not cheap. Okay? Don't be mad. It's not cheap. But when we look at it versus UAN, when we look at it versus urea, it is attractive. And honestly, what my worry is, we're going to start seeing prices ratchet up pretty quick getting close to the fall because nitrogen demand is good because of the corn crop we expect. Yeah. It is priced right. The soybeans and the cornfields are all kind of progressing nicely. Harvest should be out of the way. And after the UAN debacle this spring, I have a sneaking suspicion there's going to be a lot of farmers who sit there and say, I ain't going to deal with that crap again. I am going to get my nitrogen on. And frankly, if that means putting it on in the fall, so be it. I'll switch to anhydrous.
Well, yeah, I mean, in between the price point and the accessibility of nitrogen stabilizers, there's really nothing to keep somebody from putting it on in the fall. And like you said, then you know it's done. And
Yeah.
it's one less thing that you have to rush around in the spring and wait on and all of that. So
Yep.
yeah, tell me, is there any so I mean from my side, I mean I think nitrate anhydrous came out about $100 higher than it did last summer.
Mhm.
Um I don't know that anybody has a great answer for that. It is what it is. But the other thing that I thought was interesting is oftentimes it doesn't feel like we get a Q4 anhydrous price until, maybe mid-August, sometimes even closer to September. And yet this time we got one right away
Mhm.
here in mid-July. And if you haven't heard, if for those of you who are customers, if you haven't heard about the Q4 anhydrous price, you should talk to your salesman. It's out there. But anything, any reason for that, you think, or what does that tell us anything, or is it just somebody in Chicago decided to do it different this year?
I think it was because they can.
Yeah,
They control, again, it's that negotiating power, and I think they control so much of that power in these conversations. Like, screw it, why
yeah,
wait?
why?
What if the situation gets worse for the farmer? What if all of a sudden we start losing corn acres? We can roll this price out. We know that
Yeah,
we have the attention of the marketplace because we control so much of the negotiation power in this thing. So why wait?
yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on to phosphate.
Do we have to? It really sucks.
Man. Oh, the MKC people know, Midwest people know, they know that is a hot button topic for me. It just, golly, phosphate gets me aggravated.
Yep.
It's just so ridiculous what happened here. But
Yeah.
anyway, tell it how it is.
Yep. As of this morning, with a new NOLA DAP barge that's traded, and with December 26th corn where it's trading, you probably know a lot. I talk a lot about the whole ratio, right? The fertilizer price versus the corn price, or the bean
Yeah,
price, or the wheat price, whatever it is, because that's a better value indication. Well, the all-time high, the highest we have ever seen in the history of the market that we have data for, late 2008, and it cost 183 bushels to pay for 1 ton of DAP. 183. This morning with the barge trade and the corn trade where it was, 178. We are 5 away from etching. We are 6 away from beating it. That's 6 bushels. All we need to do is rally the DAP price 25 bucks a ton. And guys, there is domestic and international reasons with why it's so high. Number one, it's important to know when you look at nitrogen, it is a global product produced across many, many nations out there. Tons and tons of tons are produced. Phosphate, 85 to 90% of production and exports are controlled by 5 countries. Those 5 are China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, and the US. So, one of the biggest reasons why this price has been going up, and we've been talking about this for months and months and months, China. They normally export between 8 and 10 million ton per year. This year, the government stepped in and said, yeah, we're going to keep our prices low domestically and screw the rest of the world. We'll export 4.5 million. And they're holding firm to that. Guys, we don't have an extra 4 million ton laying around of production to make up that difference. The other side of it, India, their government could not have screwed up their phosphate approach for the last year plus anymore if they had literally tried. That is living proof that anytime you hear I'm from the government, I'm here to help, run the other way. And it doesn't have to be a U.S. politician, it's politicians around the world. And so their stockpiles have gotten low. And it got to the point where here a few weeks ago, the stockpiles were so low, I think it was the Congressional Opposition Party went to the floor in India and started protesting. They got removed. That was making such a stink out of it. Stockpiles were low, guys. They got stupidly low. And so your biggest world buyer, who is paying with government funds, is desperately low on stockpiles. And the world knows that China's over here exporting half or less than half than what they normally export. Do you think suppliers are going to take advantage of it? Absolutely. And every time they sell India higher, they go to every other buyer and say, you want tons? Oh, I'm not going to pay that. Fine, piss off. I'll go to India and I'll sell it there, and I'll probably sell it higher next time. So I gave you a chance. Next time, you want to buy it? India just paid higher. I'm not going to buy that. Fine, I'll go sell the next block to India. It just continues and continues and continues. So the world market for phosphate is relatively simple. It continues to be a China-India situation. Domestically, it's actually worse. I don't know how the hell it could be worse, but it is. So the 4 other countries, not ourselves, we've got China, we've got tariffs on them. They're not bringing product here. And those are long-standing tariffs. Those are from the Trump's first administration. Russia, we've got countervailing duties that were put in place in early 21. Oh, and President Trump's probably going to destroy them with tariffs here pretty soon. They're not bringing anything. Morocco, they have tariffs and they've got duties on them. So good luck with that. Saudi Arabia is our best bet, and we still have a 10% tariff on those guys. And right now, when you look at their FOB price converted to short ton, that's like a $75 a ton tariff. And Saudi Arabia is sitting there saying, I can send everything I produce to India at this price. There's absolutely no reason I need to send it to you at a lower netback at a cheaper price. So if you want to buy imports from us, pay the tariff. You need to be a $75 a ton premium over India, which is where we just got to this morning. But that's the global view. Now we're sitting there basically looking at our own domestic production, and it's been suffering since early 21. Q4 24 was the worst operating rate for phosphate in North America we'd ever seen. Q1 matched that percentage. Q2, I will not be shocked at all when we get that data that shows it's as bad or worse than Q4 and Q1. So globally, things are completely jacked up. We've put ourselves into a bigger hole because of the whole tariff duty situation, and our production stinks. This is a very cold statement I am about to make. And again, please do not shoot the messenger on this. This is just how I view it. Not only does the market not care that people are going to lower their application and demand this fall, it is actively trying to get you to do that. It is saying the market is always talking. That's the fun thing about a free market. It's always telling us a story if we know how to look and if we know how to interpret it. Today's phosphate story is saying, guys, the S&D is out of balance. Econ 101, S&D has to be balanced. That's where you find your price. It has to be balanced. It's not balanced. Let's go look at supply. Is there anything we can do about supply? No. That leaves demand. That's why I was good at Econ 101. It was like 2 lines. I can handle 2 lines. I excelled in that stupidly simple class. So next you go look at demand and say, okay, how do we destroy demand? Are you going to change the crop mix? Nope. Are you going to change this or that? Nope. Take that price so stinking high that people finally say, screw it. I won't take it. I'm done. And that's where we're finally getting to. I mean, like I said, within 5 or 6 bushels of being the all-time high value that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
It is actively trying to get you to kill demand. And a lot of people are sitting there looking at like the I states and saying, oh, these core corn states, these are the ones we need to be looking at in their economics. No, the phosphate market is actively targeting those acres that were not corn acres prior to the ethanol boom. Those are your acres that it's going to sit there and say, you guys are the ones suffering the most as far as income, as far as profitability, things like that. You're the one I'm trying to hurt.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. To add on or to follow in that same line of thinking, I get a lot of questions and a lot of comments. Don't they know what grain's doing? Don't they know how bad the price of grain is? Talk about that a little bit, because at one point in time, it did seem that corn, and really not just a couple of years ago, corn and fertilizer or grain and fertilizer did somewhat track together. Walk us through some of that for a minute.
Yeah, it was. There's always seasonal movements, right? If it'd be higher at this point, lower. There's opportunities and there's bad times, but it at least kind of stayed in a flow. But when you start to have these supply situations like they are, that's when you start to have this breakout. And that's the problem with phosphate. It's just been situation after situation, just one after another after another. And there's no reprieve. There's no help. There's no. I don't want to say there's not end in sight. There's actually an end in sight, but unfortunately that tunnel is years long, not months long.
Right.
But yeah, it's just since early 21, that normal pattern has broken apart, and it's given way to what we're dealing with today.
And it's not just in phosphate. I mean,
No.
it's I the way I tell people about it, whenever the supply side gets really, particularly really tight, then
Mhm,
it kicks the grain side out the door.
mhm,
Because and that's where we saw with UAN. Oh, well, UAN's so expensive. Yeah, because they're trying to stop people from buying UAN. I mean,
mhm,
again, it's supply and demand. We are going to sell it to those who most want it. Anybody
mhm.
who doesn't want to pay the premium, look, we don't have it anyway, so tough luck. And so I think, so that's what you see, whether it's UAN or phosphate or any of them. When supply becomes really challenged, they kick the grain tie
Yeah.
out.
The thing, if you got a situation where, let's say, a product is oversupplied, it needs to get its price low enough to incentivize more demand. It's trying to sit there and say, hey, why don't you add a little more application rate to that sucker? Help us clear a little bit of inventory here. We'll make it worth your while. But when you get to a undersupplied situation, it's trying to actively kill demand. It's trying to get you to force those application rates lower.
Right.
And again, a free market is a cool thing, but it could give a crap less about whether or not you make money.
That's right.
We do.
That's right.
I'm not sitting there saying that we're that way. I'm just saying that the phosphate market today, it literally doesn't care. It's saying, fine, don't use it. Somebody pressed the manufacturer down at a conference here a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about demand destruction. And they came back and they said, literally, by our numbers, if North America phosphate demand is down 1 million tons, think about that, guys, 1 million tons, not pounds, tons.
Tons.
It is not enough to balance the S&D. That is a scary statement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bad deal.
Now, I will say high prices eventually cure high prices, and we do see some of that happening. There's a massive phosphate rock reserve found in Norway. They're trying really hard to go after that and mine it.
Right.
That would be a lot of new production. That'd be a new player. That'd be phenomenal.
And close.
Yes, relatively close to us. We can get it. You got Egypt. They're a smaller producer, but they're trying to figure out how to boost that. You've got Morocco boosting production. You've got Saudi Arabia boosting production. Australia's boosting production. If these plants all come online, that will make the China cut pale in comparison, and we'll get back to normal. But like I said, you don't just snap your fingers and all this construction and mining and all this stuff gets done and you start producing tomorrow. That is a years long process. And that's if they make the decision and say, yep, 100% go ahead.
Yeah, I think that Norway deal was like 7 to 10 years before they thought they'd actually turn a shovel on it. And maybe they'll get it quicker, but I don't know that
Yeah.
they've even decided if they want to do it because of, environmental impacts and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
pretty
It was,
cool.
it was kind of irritating. There was a video I watched on YouTube and it was taken from the farmer side. And, oh, my generations have been at this farm. We don't lose it. And as you're walking down this path and chatting, they're like, oh, look at that rock sticking out of the ground. You see that little different color ribbon in it? That's phosphate. It's like, you bastards literally have it sticking out of the ground. That's how much that reserve is. It's massive.
Oh my gosh.
But
Wow.
you've got to get, I mean, Norway is still a little bit more Eastern, or I'm sorry, European than anything else,
Oh
and
yeah.
much more on the environmental kick and stuff like that. So it's going to be an uphill battle, but
Yeah.
there's at least something we can look forward to. Otherwise, it's a tough outlook.
Yeah. Because the countervailing duties, and I know we've talked about before that's part of it, but we're still, I mean, prices would still be high even without the
Yes, sir.
countervailing duties. Now, one might argue that Morocco would be producing more if they had the market and, if the countervailing duties hadn't shut off part of the market. But the countervailing duties are here to stay
Mhm.
most likely through next year, right?
Yeah. Yep, and that's the unfortunate part. There's a review going on. There's some that are hoping that, oh, they'll review it. It's a different set of people and it's a different political headwinds in Washington D.C. If they're going to do away with it. It's a possibility. I'm not going to sit there and act like I know the details of that stuff. I can't
Yeah.
even explain it very well, so I don't even try. But I'm not holding my breath that it happens.
That gives us a lot of confidence. If you who do fertilizer every day can't explain it, but we're going to let some lawyers and politicians sort out the details for us. We should all feel really good about that.
Yeah,
Why don't, real quick, potash, anything to talk about? We're not even a big potash user by and large. Eastern
yeah.
Kansas uses a little more potash, but anything there we should be looking at?
the potash price is higher this summer than what I expected it to be by a decent chunk, but it still makes sense when you look at it versus grains. It's not low. It's not cheap. It's nothing close to it, but it's not out of line like phosphate and nitrogen is. And so it's still one of those I think everybody will be like, this stinks, but I'll go ahead and put it on. So it is what it is. I think it's going to stay fairly stable. Uh, I still like the outlook of potash from a buyer's standpoint. I still think it's a very, very well supplied marketplace, which should keep a cap on price ideas. You've got Laos, who is increasing their production rates with a lot of Chinese investments. They want to invest in Laos. They don't want to buy that crap from Canada. They don't want to support a Western country. And by developing Laos, now all of a sudden you are more hand in hand with those guys. Your sphere of influence in the region is increased. Russia is increasing their production. Canada is increasing their production. And interesting thing with the Canadian deal, BHP was producing a mine in Jansen. They're building it, and they're expected to turn the first ton next year. Weekend or two ago, they came out and said, "Hey, we're delaying this." Now, a big chunk of it is they said it's cost blowout. Makes sense. But they did make a statement that said when you look at the medium term supply outlook, it's very well supplied. That's exactly what we've been sitting there saying. Like, guys,
Yeah.
this is a really, really well supplied market. And yeah, there's going to be times when it does move higher and this and that, but I'm not worried about potash like I am with the phosphates, like I am with the nitrogens.
Yeah. Hey, how do you feel about that government program to increase potash production in the U.S.?
I got to watch myself not get in trouble with this one. I like that the government is paying attention to fertilizer and is putting investments into it to help expand production. And that's where my nice comments stop. I think the fact that they gave the $1.2 billion loan to the potash market of all effing inputs in the freaking world, we can produce some of the cheapest nitrogen in the world, and we are a massive importer. We are a massive demand point, and we can produce it here cheaper and cleaner than the rest of the world. We can sit there and use those funds to help maybe increase the lands that Mosaic can access and maybe help upgrade their freaking equipment so they can produce at a normal level again.
Yeah.
And down in Florida or some of these other places around the U.S. To give that money to the potash market, just it stinks of a politician that doesn't know their butt from a hole in the ground.
Yeah, it would be really, I mean, I talk about, another side of supply and demand, right? Is high demand should drive more supply. And yet, I mean, nobody really talks about increasing, particularly nitrogen production within the United States. And I don't know if that's just a regulatory, the regulatory side of it and getting it approved, or it just seems like we should do something here domestically to increase production.
Yeah. Well, if you think of it from a money standpoint, if you're going to build a world scale nitrogen facility, you are talking somewhere between 3 and 5 billion US dollar. I don't have that laying around. Not many people do. And
You
so,
don't, but there's a fella in Wichita, I'm pretty sure, after these last few years of fertilizer prices, I'm pretty sure they could scratch together a couple $1 billion.
but why would you? You already
Very
have
true.
a lot of production points across the US that are making massive amounts of margin.
Yeah.
If we build a new plant, that's new supply. More supply, same demand, prices in theory go lower, which means
Yeah.
his margins go lower. Why would a manufacturer want to increase production if it's going to lower their overall margin?
Yeah.
It disincentivizes them to do it. That's why you're kind of at the stalemate where you can't get outside money. You can't get somebody to give you $5 billion for something as dumb as a nitrogen plant. Good Lord, I can go get CDs and make a better return. And then your current manufacturer saying, I already control this thing. Why would I want to water it down?
Yeah.
I'm loving this stuff. I never thought I'd make this kind of margin again.
Yeah. Gosh, you're gonna start a Bitcoin factory. That's what we got to do. Doesn't grow corn though. I know it doesn't grow corn. Hey, well, we've got about 10 minutes left, and then we're definitely going to shut it down before we get in trouble. But I don't see really any questions. Somebody asked a question about we don't have anybody else in our marketplace, it doesn't seem. So if there's any farmers on here who have gotten Q4 prices, would love to tell your salespeople about it. We've had Q4 prices out for about a month now, maybe close to a month. Other people don't seem to be doing that. You think that's because other people think that the price of Q4 anhydrous is going to go down, maybe?
That or they're just scared to have the conversation. I mean, this is a lot of these conversations are not going to be easy. I've been joking that a lot of these retailers out there need to get a like MKC branded Kevlar vest, so at least you have some sort of protection when you walk up to the guy and start talking about fertilizer prices.
Yeah,
It's a very uncomfortable thing. It probably has a lot of people saying, let's wait, maybe it gets better tomorrow."
yeah. I mean, hope is a strategy, right?
It's not a good
I-
one.
it's not a good one. I don't think you're gonna win a Super Bowl on a hope strategy, but anyway, you can do that. Well, hey, if there's any other questions that people have, people can get to you on Twitter.
Yep.
They have my email address and phone number, so feel free to give us a call. Maybe we'll do this again in a
Yeah.
couple months or something, and who knows how different the story can be. Like we
I
said,
think
hey, look, if the president gets say, I mean, we could have a whole different world by December, given what we've seen over the last. I mean, a year ago, when there were other town halls, not our awesome town hall we just had, but other town halls going on, nobody would have thought most of these things that we've seen over the last 6 months would have happened. So it's every day's a new day.
Yep.
And,
That's the thing. At the end of the day, it's there are always changes. Some are expected, some are not. But even the ones that are expected, they usually happen quicker because you think it, everybody else thinks it, and somebody's like, "Well, I'm going to get ahead of the next person. I'm going to do it sooner." I mean, these things they absolutely do change, and they will continue to. And there's always going to be people that enjoy it. There are going to be people that hate it. But change is the only constant in life, guys. So we can embrace it or stick our head in the sand and hope it changes or doesn't change.
that's right. That's right. All right, Josh. Appreciate the time and the insight,
Yeah, brother.
and we'll catch you again next time.
I like it. See you then.
All right, thanks, Josh. Thanks, everyone.